So Douglas is sick and Neil has family visiting from Ireland, so we're a little bit smaller today. But hi, everybody. I'm glad you're here. Peter is not here because I said I would be too freaked out if he was here to listen to me talk about my revision process. I mean, for some, this is like scarier than doing any of the other teaching, because I wrote it and because I'm
'Cause-
showing you the bad versions of something. Um, Poets don't tend to want to show the bad versions of things, you know? Um, and so everybody has the impression, which is completely false, that poets only ever write good things, like whatever you read that's published. Even if you don't like it, you can say, well, it's published. But everybody hides, shamefacedly all the billions of like really bad things they wrote, either as first drafts or as things that were dead on birth, whatever. So here we go.
yeah, but what I'm worried about is I won't be able to tell the difference.
Well, you get,
I won't be able to make a judgment. I can tell a difference, but I won't be able to make a judgment. And
okay,
so your idea is not maybe the same as the readers.
of course not. It never will be. It never will be. But as I always said to my students, you have to be able to argue for what you say. You have to be able to show within the poem what for you is working or what's not working. No two people are ever going to agree. I mean, like for instance, I think The Wasteland is a great poem, but there's plenty of people who really don't like The Wasteland. William
I'm
Carlos
just rem-
Williams, go ahead.
I'm just reminded of the Beatles. Uh, uh, I remember hearing John Lennon. No, it was Paul McCartney saying, "I had this line in one of his favorite
Yeah, yeah.
famous hits." And he says, "Nah, I'm gonna. That's terrible. I got to get rid of it." And I remember him saying, Lennon said, "You will never get rid of that.
Oh yeah.
Don't do it." So,
Yeah.
there
That
you
was
go.
from
But of course,
that
they
was
were
from Hey
partners.
Jude. That was Hey Jude. The
Yeah.
moment I need is on my shoulder or something. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you're never gonna, two people are never gonna agree, but as long as you can talk about why you feel the way you do or show within the poem things that for you are working or not working and be specific and be explicit, then you can make a reasoned argument. But realize that people like William Carlos Williams, I mean, he paid to get published for the first 3 decades of his publishing life. Now he's recognized as one of the great American poets. But people didn't just look at his early stuff and go, oh, wow, this is a great American poet. They're like, this isn't poetry. This isn't poetry. What is this weird stuff?
Well, wasn't that true of somebody like Cervantes or Millville or somebody? Somebody really famous.
Melville. His first novel, Taipei, was a huge success, made him a bundle of money, made him a rock star. His second novel, Omu, is weirder and stranger. His third novel was less so. And by the time he got to Moby Dick, which, many people, including me, would think this is the greatest American novel yet, people were like, the guy's mad, the guy's loony, this is a terrible, dismal failure. And we talked about having him institutionalized. You know,
Oh my God.
No, seriously, seriously, because why? It's breaking all the rules. He referred to it as a loose, baggy monster. But sometimes, and Emily Dickinson, remember we talked about that with, Thomas Wentworth Higginson saying, nice try, but these aren't working. And so after seven publishings in local newspapers, she stopped sending stuff out. All 1,776 of her poems, except for seven of them, were discovered and published after her death. But remember, we talked about how it took about 80 years after her death for there to be a more or less definitive edition of her poems, because so many of the people publishing, editing her work were like, oh, the poor dear didn't know how to rhyme. Oh, the poor dear didn't know how to punctuate. So they would quote correct her poems and make them like boring as hell and make them according to the taste of, Victorian American and English readers, right? So no, it's like it's not a science. I mean, duh, art is not a science. And so you're always going to have people who are crazy about something, people who don't recognize it at the time, people who can recognize it for the bad stuff that it is, you know. But still, I think it's interesting to look at the process, which you
Yeah.
don't have to do very often, by which
Hey,
something comes into existence.
hey, Ann, I
Well,
have. Do you
I
want me
also
to?
think there's a difference between the public's acceptance or rejection of the art and other artists' input, because a lot of what you've talked about is poets working with poets and helping them revise and improve. So I think there's a case where the writer has agreed with another writer that there's a way to improve the work, and I think that's interesting.
Which is why it really helps to have a community of other writers whose work you respect, you know. But on the other hand, that can give you a kind of leveling downward to the common denominator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a while, people were talking a lot about, quote, the workshop poem, because workshops are so wildly popular in the United States. Online workshops, in-person workshops, low residency workshops. It's like a lot of writers, that's how they make their living, is by teaching workshops. But you can get teachers who will, or workshop members who will expect everything to pretty much sound the same, you know, go through a personal experience, end with an image, something like that. And you break the mold, you do something different. And again, it's like, well, you should think about how to fix this. So, I mean, it's a
Well,
crapshoot. Go ahead.
I have some experience in this. I was, first of all, pitching tunes to everybody in LA. The first guy will say, "Well, the bridge is ruins the song," and the next guy will say, "The only thing that saves this song is the bridge."
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And so I learned to just ignore everything they said except yes or no. And then the other thing to say about that was I had one song in particular. It took me about 10 years to write, and I finally gave up and rewrote it with a bunch of co-writers. Not a bunch, maybe four or five, and none of them clicked until the last one. And
Yeah.
so that's the process. I suppose you don't ever co-write, but when you
Oh, yeah,
co-write,
I have.
sometimes oh you have.
Hmm.
Well, that's interesting too. I'd like to hear about that. But it's a very mysterious process. I think it's not like building a house or something where you know what the parameters are and the standard practices are. It,
Exactly.
it's just you have an ear, and maybe the other person shares that, and maybe they don't. And
Yeah.
I can screen share both of these, or I can just screen share one at a time. What would you
Yeah,
prefer?
do one at a time. Start with
Okay.
Cambodia, and I'm going to kind of talk us through the versions of it. So this is a poem that I started like more than 20 years ago, just in case you get the idea that people sit down and just write a poem and there it is. And sometimes that happens, but more often than not, it doesn't. And it's a poem that I never stopped being interested in because I wanted to figure out how to make it work. A lot of stuff that I would have written starting 20 years ago, I would have just decided, like bury that deep and whatever. Yeah, so let's screen share.
All right. So I'm gonna let me do that, and then you're gonna have to. I'm afraid you're gonna have to tell me which one you want.
It's called Campourier, Campoou.
Right. I've got that, but hold on a second. Uh,
It's just one document.
Oh, I've got two for some reason. This is what I have.
Yeah, this is what we want to look at. Okay, so this came into existence years ago. Peter and I met some friends um, in the south of France, and they live in Paris. He's American, she's French. And we went to this amazing little tiny village called Campourier, which is in La France Profonde, which I love that name. It's like the profoundest, truest France, right in the middle of nowhere. Now, I don't even remember exactly which was the first version. I think it was probably on a previous computer. But it started out because I was so impressed with the beauty of this place and the, wonderful difference from where I am of this place. And I was also impressed and struck by this thing that happened. Okay, so Campourier. Here in La France Profonde, where we are traveling with friends, the bells are ringing for Sunday evening mass. A hairy black and brown dog runs down the alley and up the church steps, tongue hanging out, panting. Across the street, the guinea fowls squawk, marching home, strut, strut. A duck bobs behind, then one more guinea fowl. High on the wall, a mud daub nest is full of baby swallows. A parent darts in, squealing heads pop out and back again. The parent darts off, and there is silence until a farm woman comes along, her hands full of haricots verts. We speak. Ils sont jolis, les haricots. Ah oui. I am sitting on a bench outside her yard, which is full of fuchsias and red geraniums. Against the church wall that borders it, someone has stacked a great pile of beautiful oblong roof tiles. Now the woman has passed again, gray haired, aproned in blue, with a blue plastic bucket swinging from her hand. As night comes on, the air is full of swallows, and here 3 people for mass. They are followed by a basset hound so old he can hardly move, who lifts a leg and pees slowly, lugubriously, against a corner of the church. Peter has been reading Nerval. At lunch, he told us the poet's suicide note. Ne m'attends pas ce soir, car la nuit sera noire et blanche.
Mm.
Our friend said she might kill herself if she didn't have her husband. I give you these sentences one by one. You may imagine how they have rippled across the afternoon. So obviously, this is written as more or less a prose poem. I would say that a strength of it is its details, that it's full of details. And, poetry, like writers always say, God is in the details or the devil is in the details. It's like without details, you're not going to really communicate an experience, you know? And I think it has some pretty good details that I wanted to hang on to through revision after revision. But I would say to me, the weakness of this is that it's inert. It's like a reader doesn't really know why he or she's reading it. It's kind of a travelogue a little bit. And it's like, okay, so this is this place. And then we get to what is trying to be kind of what's the word I want? What's the word I want? The high point. The high point. With Peter, naming Peter is a deliberate choice. You don't have to name a person you can has been reading Nerval, this famous French poet. At lunch, he told us the poet's suicide note. And that is the suicide note. And then our friend said she might kill herself if she didn't have her husband. And then we get what I now think is this achingly pretentious, I give you these sentences one by one. It's like, well, yeah, duh. That's what I just did. You may imagine how they have rippled across the afternoon, you know? So I sat with that for a while and I probably sent it out and got turned down. I mean, this got turned down a bunch of times before it finally reached a final form. So let's look at a next version. Here in La France Profonde. No, stay up right there. So now I'm trying to divide this into stanzas. I'm trying to make it look like a free verse poem. And I figured, I suppose, that people wouldn't know what Campourier was. So I called it Here in La France Profonde. Now, notice this is a wraparound title. It goes right into the first line of the poem. The bells are ringing for Sunday evening mass. Guinea fowls squawk, marching home. A duck bobs behind, then one more guinea fowl. On the church wall, baby swallows squeal in their mud daub nests. A parent darts in, the parent darts off, then silence. And then I've got this little thing. I think at the point I thought, oh, that's really pretty. And I'll do that. And that is above the, I can't remember what key it's above, but it's like to divide it in a fancy way into stanzas. A farm woman nears, her hands full of haricots verts. Ils sont jolis, les haricots. Ah oui. And enters her stone-walled yard lined with fuchsias and red geraniums. So I'm trying to get some action going here. Now she has passed again, gray-haired, aproned in blue, a blue plastic bucket swinging from her hand. More time. Now it's a retrospect. At lunch, my husband mentioned Nerval's suicide note. Ne m'attends pas ce soir, car la nuit sera noire et blanche. Our friend said she might kill herself if she didn't have her husband. How her words have rippled across the afternoon. I think that's better. It's a little more concise. It doesn't have that show offy, you may imagine how they have rippled stuff. So let's go down some more to whatever comes next.
And can you
Yeah.
translate to French, please?
No, you'll find out eventually.
Ah, okay.
You will find out, okay?
Tony, I could text it to you, but
And
I
no, no,
won't.
no, no, no,
I
because
won't.
that's
I
part of the
won't.
point. That's part of the point, okay?
I I can
Now,
almost get it.
yeah, but you'll find out. Now I'm back to calling it Campourier, okay? And I've got a lot of the same details, but you can see that here. Now I'm trying to work with patterned stanzas because spacing and patterning are just as important in a poem as anything else. It's like if it's just a blob, the way that first version was, some things work as a prose poem, but some things really want to open up, they want to breathe. So you can see couple different versions. Here in La France Profonde, the bells are ringing for Sunday evening mass. Next version, I forget that here in La France Profonde, here's now the church bells are ringing for Sunday evening mass. In the first version, I've got justified left margin, tab in, second line. And I'm like, oh, let's fool with that. Second version is tab in first line, justified margin, second line. And you can see how they just look different, but they're kind of still pretty much the same. And I get really obsessed with shaping poems. Um, these are long line poems, and essentially each pair of lines is a sentence. And I wanted to break it up that way so that you're reading it as carryover sentences. They just go out, pretty much to the end of the line. But then at the same time, you've got the space between stanzas. Okay. So I'm still hanging on to so many of the details, except that in the second version, I've decided I'm going to add piece of the sunlight, which is like another total gag me with a spoon line. You get into these things where you're just like, oh, that's so great. And then you look at it later and like it physically hurts because it's kind of pretentious. It's off the subject. It's trying to guide the reader in a way that you shouldn't have to guide the reader. So that's where we're getting. So let's go down some more. Okay. Let's see, where are we now? Oh my God, more breakup. This must have been much earlier, but it is getting shorter. And I'm jettisoning details. I don't need all the details. But you can see here again, I'm trying to break it up into moments of time, starting out with here in La France Profonde, and then a farm woman, the little anecdote about her, and then in the third section, the part about the suicide note. Notice that these are pretty regular in that each of the sections, and you'll get this a lot when you get to Galway Canal, he loves to work in sections, but each of these sections is more or less three stanzas long. Okay, but then back out to Campourier, a version that doesn't have those little sectional dividers. And then we're going to go down some more because I'm still not getting it. It still isn't working. Aha, here is where it starts to work. Do you know what burying the lead means in journalism? It's when you're sticking the important part way down at the end. You're giving us what everybody wore, and then you're getting around to a murder was committed in the middle of like that. And you're like, okay, I've been burying the lead the whole time. It's like, why the heck should you care unless you begin with this pretty shocking, dramatic thing? My husband quotes Nerval when we are speaking of poetry. Ne m'attends pas ce soir car la nuit sera noire et blanche. You're like, okay, here in this mountain town. Now I'm telling you where Campourier is. Of fuchsias and geraniums, and a farm woman with a blue bucket, her hands full of haricots verts. I'm getting rid of almost all the individual details. The dog peeing, the tiles, a lot of the details. Our friend lays down her fork, says she might kill herself too if she didn't have her husband. No one speaks. No one speaks is doing the work that does pretentious statements like I give you these sentences one by one or a piece of the sunlight. It's accomplishing that sense of awkwardness and shock and now what? Then night comes on. So we're leaping forward in time quite a bit. Then night comes on, the air is full of swallows. The bells begin ringing for Sunday evening mass. Okay. This version has a whole different shape. I invented this stanza form and I use it a lot and I really love it. It's something that gets a poem, when I write it, sometimes a poem that hasn't been moving starts to move. And it's left justified, tab one, tab three, tab two, left justified. So it goes in this kind of awkward little wave-like motion, back and forth, circling back and forth. But
Mm.
then I realize, like Tony, you might not know what that means. So I've got an asterisk and I translate it. Do not wait for me this evening, for the night will be black and white. And then I thought, but that's sticking out. That's an excrescence. You shouldn't have to have this footnote for that short a poem. Here's my final version, and this is the one that got snapped up and published. Comme pourrier. My husband quotes Nerval when we are speaking of poetry. Ne m'attends pas ce soir, car la nuit sera noire et blanche. Do not wait for me this evening, for the night will be black and white. Here in this mountain town of fuchsias and geraniums, and a farm woman with a blue bucket, her hands full of haricots verts. Our friend lays down her fork, says she might kill herself too if she didn't have her husband. No one speaks. Then night comes on. The air is full of swallows. The bells begin ringing for Sunday evening mass. So that's the final version. So I would love it if people wanted to, talk about it or ask about it or opine.
Well, I found this very interesting, Anne, and perhaps more interesting than anything we've done so far. Uh, First of all, the level of attention and conscious trying to manipulate all the words to make them do what you want them to do, which is probably, I imagine, when you started, not clear to you
Yeah.
exactly what you want them to do. It probably emerges, I'm just imagining this, of course, it emerges as the writing progresses. And I'll tell you, I think the last one is the best version, but I couldn't tell you why. I wouldn't be able to articulate why that is, despite the fact that I just listened to you critique every step along the way. It's very interesting. Um,
Thank
yeah, the last one just has uh, more. I like I say, I can't. And I was right about the French. I just wasn't certain
you. Yeah.
about it. So yeah, thanks, Anne. That was very interesting.
The reason the last one is best is that it has managed to wiggle itself loose from being a step-by-step description of something and it's turned into a thing in itself. You know, one thing I like that I had not intended, but that to me seems really pretty cool is I wanted to work in the translation, but I didn't want to use like, this means do not wait for me this evening or I just wanted to run it in. So you've got this
Mhm.
ne matin pas ce soir car la nuit sera noire et blanche. Do not wait for me this evening, for the night will be black and white here in this mountain town,
Yes.
which to me is really scary. It's like that, not scary like a horror movie, but scary like that mood carries over to then our friend saying she also has considered suicide, you know? So to
Hmm.
me, that kind of glues or weds the two moments of the poem. This 19th century French poet who did commit suicide, and then our friend, listening to that line. And of course, she's French, so she knows the poem and knows Nerval, but then saying, that she just pipes up in the middle of lunch. I might kill myself too if I didn't have my husband. And you're like, gulp, you know? But yeah. it's a quiet poem. It's not like then she grabbed her bread knife and started sawing at her wrist. It's not like that. It's just then night comes on, the air is full of swallows, and we're hearing the swallows, the twittering, the bells begin ringing for Sunday evening mass, which of course, in a way, sanctifies this place. Um, Maybe sanctifies the moment or adds a counterweight to thoughts of suicide if your human love is not there. So, I mean, literally, it took more than 20 years between the first version and the last version. And
Uh,
obviously, there was a lot that happened in between. I didn't look at it every day, but I kept thinking, oh man, I just wish I could figure out how to make this one work? And finally, I guess I just kind of threw it against the wall and like spaghetti that was done is stuck. So that's all I can say about that.
the Did you say that the first version was submitted and rejected?
Oh, every version of this was submitted and rejected over and
Oh, oh,
listen, one of my books was rejected 44 times before it got taken, and it's my
oh my
best.
God. Well, if you hadn't gotten one rejected, it would be the final version. Isn't that true?
Probably, but I never would have written the final version if I didn't keep getting the other ones rejected.
That's so
Yeah.
interesting. That's so interesting. Well, I after I wrote my
Or
book,
else,
I was attending some kind of symposium on how to get published, and one of the, one of the things the guy said was, if you don't have 100 rejection slips, you're not trying.
yeah, seriously. Laurel,
Yeah, so I'm glad to be back. And
ew.
the thing that this final version makes me think of, I've just been reading a beautiful book on Japanese calligraphy and screens. And if I read this, I also almost have a vision. It's very much like a screen that you would read in sequence, where the first panel
Oh
it
yeah.
has a calligraphy inscription that and then each panel has a little piece of the story that's a separate little piece, like a picture. And then at the end there's kind of a concluding piece that's like it's walking away somehow. So for me, this is just a it's just very like a Japanese storytelling screen
Oh,
with
that's
five
cool.
panels.
That's cool. I once wrote a whole chapbook called Walking Wu Wei's Scroll. Um, when I was in Paris one time, I saw this amazing exhibition of Japanese and Chinese scrolls. And this one was about as long as a room and it was laid out horizontally. So you would walk it, from one direction and then back the other way. Because, of course, we read from left to right, but Japanese and Chinese goes from right to left.
Right, the screens. And that's why I sort of, when I pictured this, I was thinking right to left, because I've I've spent a lot of time looking at Japanese screens. When I was at Harvard, the I was just a few blocks from the Museum of Fine Arts, and when I got really just depressed by the AIDS clinical trials and people I knew dying off and stuff, I would go over and sit in the either the screen room or the Sung Dynasty porcelain room and think these things have lasted 1,000
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. That's
And
great.
but this is that's what this, and it felt to me like the first versions didn't have that
No,
quality of,
they're really crowded. They're really crowded.
yeah, but this is just, it's like it's these perfect little five pieces that you walk through.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you.
And
Oh,
a couple of thoughts. First of all, is it did you often this one begins with the original prose poem out that we started with here. It seems like that was just kind of almost like you recording these impressions
yeah,
of that particular day,
yeah.
and not necessarily thinking about the poetic form that it might evolve into, but then you got there. Is that a method you've used more than once?
Yeah, you have to gather material. I mean, I write all different kinds of ways, but sometimes just jotting down the information. I remember I was sitting in our hotel room with my journal and I just thought it was so beautiful looking out the window. And then I was sitting out in the courtyard and this farm woman came by and that's an actual conversation. And I was watching the dog and the birds and, remembering the lunchtime. And I think everybody else had gone for a hike and I wanted to stay behind and write. But yeah, I mean, it helps to be gathering information. I
Yeah.
I used to have a friend who was a novelist, and if you invited him over for dinner, he'd sit at the dinner table and write down what people were saying. You're like, no,
Yeah,
stop.
I mean that's what it seemed like. It was like a gathering of these impressions and then shaping it into a poem. And I could see all the structural kind of things you looked at. I think the key breakthrough was having the quote, the Nerval quote at the beginning,
Yeah,
because not only did that give the thing meaning, but the way it handled the color issue, because it
right.
says the black and white at the beginning, and then you move from that the black and white of this suicide note into the colors that you're experiencing, in the town, which I thought was really effective.
Oh,
So
thank you.
this
I've
is,
never thought of that. That's very smart. Thank you. Otis.
Yeah, I thought, first of all, I think the last one is the best version by far, but it's my second favorite is the first one. I
yeah,
think there's a
Yes,
huge gap
yes,
in there.
yes.
And I think that I was really surprised to hear you say in your explanation just now, referring to your friend at lunch putting down her fork, because the way the poem unfolds now, I very much feel like this is much later in the day, and we know that night is coming, and when night is coming for Nerval, that means no more color, no more life. And so felt something very strong and ominous, but it was about the passage of time. It's getting dark, and the woman gets worried and thinks, well, he killed himself at night. Maybe I will kill myself at night too.
Yeah, that could be. That could be. Of course, you can also just jump a lot of time. Um, I mean, yeah, but that's a good thing to notice. But that's interesting that you like the first version second best. I like the details in the first version. It's just that people reading it are like, well, that's a bunch of interesting details. Like, so you went on a trip. You know.
I have a quick question, though. It's a technical question. When you submit a work with the same name in a new version, do you ever get the comment, well, I've seen this before and rejected it, so I'm
You
not going
don't
to read
send
it?
it to the same place. You
So,
don't send it to the same place. There's
okay.
like a billion places to send stuff. And
Okay.
you keep a log. I mean, I've got this, what do you call, spreadsheet thing with over 1,000 entries on it. And I just have to tell you guys, you get turned down a lot more than you get accepted. Like I once, Patty Ann Rogers is a fairly famous poet, or was anyway. And she came and gave a reading, and I was like driving her to the airport, and I said, "This is when I was just a newbie, and I was terrified." And I said, "Do you ever get turned down?" She goes, "If I get one acceptance in 10, I'm doing well." And I'm like, "Okay. But you just have to develop the height of a rhinoceros.
Yeah,
Larry Brown, I don't know if you guys
same in
know.
science. It's the same in science, Anne. That when I actually got one accepted, a paper accepted with no changes, not even any edits,
Yeah,
I thought it must be a joke. I was about to pass out.
I know, I
Because
know.
even when I've had things that they say, "Oh, we like this, but could you please change these three things or do this
Yeah,
little stuff?" That's sort of the good outcome. But
yeah,
one thing I wondered is one of the things we have is if you submit, you might wind up with the same reviewers in a different
yeah.
journal. And I don't know whether do your people have different reviewers or is it just the editors and
It's
they
the
because
editors. It's the editors. Unless it's a contest and then they have a contest judge. But you're not gonna run into yourself coming and going. It's just not gonna happen. Most editors are volunteer, readers are volunteer. A lot of times readers are grad students, but that's for like book contests and stuff. Um, Pretty much the editors read the submissions, or they might have more than one person reading, but you don't ever have somebody say, "Well, geez, I saw the last five versions of this. Like, why don't you send it someplace else?" And there's like a billion journals out there. Not all of them are good. Some of them are dreadful, but there's a lot of small journals that are actually really doing good stuff.
yeah.
So.
I saw Willie Nelson on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson one time, and they started talking about their early life, and it turned out both of them had been door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesmen.
Yeah.
Talk about and that just said a lot. That if you're a door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman, you make 100 calls, and if you just like you said, Ann, if you get one interested person, you consider it a good day.
Yeah.
And I thought that says a lot about why those guys are successful.
Oh yeah, persistence. Well, I
Yeah.
remember Harrison Ford was a carpenter in Hollywood until he got cast as Han Solo. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Tony, I have a couple questions. I'm wondering if we can see on screen the first and second versions. I mean, I can't scroll through. I don't know if these got sent out and I missed them. Um,
They were sent out.
yeah, because I can't flip back. So I don't really even know what I want to say, except that the process is fascinating to me. And when I saw one of the things that you had begun changing, and something about the sentences rippled through the afternoon. In
Hmm.
my mind, I thought, oh, does she want to say that? Didn't they rip? Didn't they rip at least through the afternoon? It seemed so gentle, given
Yeah.
the fact that we're talking about suicide. And then, of course, you got rid of that altogether. But I was already early on troubled by the word rippling because it didn't seem like it seemed like a gentle word for a tough topic. And then the other change, yeah, without having them all in front of me, I don't feel like I'm very coherent here. But the other change that really affected me was how you captured, frankly, the poignant mood of the very first thing you wrote. There was a tenderness about it. You were loving the beauty of it all, but there was this discussion, mention of suicide in a very personal level. And so that can be so maudlin in a way. And then as the poems evolve, the very last one ends with the ringing of the church bells, which for a lot of people symbolizes a call to prayer, maybe a belief in resurrection, maybe hypocrisy about, just church bells ringing brings up a lot of feelings that, in reference to suicide, are various and really rich. In some of the middle poems, it seemed like it lost the, not ambiguity, but the possibilities. Like, you were telling people what to feel. And
Yeah.
And the end one is just like, okay, there's a person who did commit suicide. There's a woman who said, and then there's the beauty of the world and the church bells. And if you try and say all those things, it can get kind of rot.
Yeah.
But it's very sweet. It begins with this. I don't know. I think it's an amazing transition. And I will print them all out and read them all because it does give hope for rewrites.
I rewrite. You got to learn to love to rewrite. I love to rewrite and I love to cut. I just do, you know. I
But
was going to mention, do you guys have you ever heard of Larry Brown, Southern writer? He's an amazing person. He was a fireman in Tula, Mississippi, which is like population 500 or something. But he wanted to be a fiction writer, so he audited classes at the University of Mississippi, and he literally sent out, like I've seen his printed out page of rejection. He kept a list, like over 100 rejections of stories before one got accepted. And then when his first book, which is called Facing the Music, got accepted by a Southern press, he shot to the top of the New York Times book list. He's an amazing writer, and he just absolutely didn't quit, you know?
mm,
I have a
um,
question, Anne. When you get rejections, do you ever get feedback that you find useful?
Yeah, sometimes you do. Sometimes you do. They always say if you get any kind of personalized rejection, you're supposed to feel cheerful. I don't feel cheerful, but it's better than a form rejection. But no, mostly editors don't have time. They might get, I mean, look, I, I'm trying to think of a good example. Recently I was in an anthology and there were 30 rejections for every one acceptance, which means if there were, 200 poems in this anthology, there were 6,000 submissions. And editors just absolutely don't have time to comment individually. You know, that's where you sign up and pay and take a workshop and get feedback.
Hmm.
Um,
Most
but
most
but
of the
most of the
time,
time,
I find that they either like it or they don't, and then if you want to comment, they'll think of something to say, but it isn't necessarily helpful.
yeah,
They just don't like it, you know.
no.
Just like you might meet somebody and not like them. What's the reason? What?
I have a music publisher who has published three of my pieces, but has rejected eight.
Oh
But
yeah.
what I enjoy about her is number one, the rejections come right away, and number two, she tells you exactly why,
Well, that's nice.
and that's really valuable to know. In some cases, she's wrong, and in some cases, other publishers will publish a Christmas Carol even though she doesn't want to.
Yeah.
But it's really useful to know what's on her mind so that I don't waste her time in the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I mean, I like getting feedback. I don't mostly get it if stuff gets turned down. It's mostly just like, thanks very much, please send again. Or, these weren't right for us, which is legitimate. It's like, yeah, what are you looking for this time? It stops hurting as much. And also when you learn like, okay, for instance, a super famous poet right now is Amy Nezukumatado. Super famous. But she just got a poem published in Poetry Magazine. She said she's been sending for 20 years to poetry, and finally got a yes. So
You
it's
know,
like you either play the game or you don't play the game.
And I have a question.
Yeah.
So now that you are a poet laureate and an accepted and multiply published poet, has that changed this whole pattern of submission and rejection at all?
Yeah, it's easier, but there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee, you know. And I'm lazy about it by now. I'm busy and I care less about getting an individual poem published. I have a friend named Lauren Camp who was until recently poet laureate of New Mexico, and I know her through this group called the Black Earth Institute that I'm part of. And she has an interesting. She publishes like about a poem every 5 minutes, and she always announces on Facebook. But she publishes in places that I never, ever, ever heard of. And I once, we were at a retreat together, and I said to her something like, "So do you only send out to like pretty well-known places?" And she's like, "Oh God, no." She's like, "I'll send out anywhere." Um, and she publishes in really good places, but she also publishes all over the world. She publishes literally in places I've never heard of. I don't know how she even finds that they exist. So that's another attitude, not just sending to the big five and getting turned down a billion times, but sending to, there's a lot of really nice journals that are going to be more interested in your work. Okay, Poetry Magazine, I
uh,
think it's 30,000 submissions a year. They publish two poems a week. So that's what,
a
100
hundred.
For
poems a year out of 30,000. You're not going to hold your breath, you know?
Um, okay, three quick things. First of all, I didn't have that persistence at all. I felt like after a few rejections, I thought this is not a good job, and I didn't have that fire in the belly as many of my friends do to make it. I just didn't care that much. I mean, if I get successful, that's great, but my life didn't depend on it.
Mhm.
Secondly, completely different subject. Uh, Deborah mentioned bells. One of the weird things about traveling the way we did was we spent a lot of time in the Muslim world, and they don't
Mm.
have church bells. And then you come back to Europe, and all of a sudden you're hearing church bells. You wouldn't think that'd be a big deal, but somehow it is so much a part of your unconscious memory of the past, and so foreign not to have it. And then the third thing, really quick, is Bob Dylan. When Huey Lewis made it, he got submissions from Bob Dylan to give you an idea of persistence.
Yeah.
Dylan was well established by then, far and away the most um, respected songwriter on the planet. Huey didn't do them.
Uh, he turned
He
it down.
rejected. Yeah, turned them
Woo!
down.
Wow. Yeah, that's been known to happen because sometimes really famous poets will send what they know is their weak work, and they're like, "You're going to take this because I'm me," you know. And then somebody with guts is going to say, "No, not working," you know. That is known to happen.
I
And
I have a couple questions too. You want to go, Barry? Go ahead.
no, go ahead, Deborah. Go ahead.
All right. My first question is kind of linked to the second one, but my question is, when you start doing revisions, do you sometimes find out that you've cut out something that didn't feel relevant to you, but kind of carried the story for the reader? Like you're so enmeshed in it that you've deleted something so that now it's kind of lost its sense. Is that a
Oh yeah,
sensible question?
sure,
Do you know what I mean?
sure, yeah, yeah, I do. I can't think of a good example, but I know I've done it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have a
And
uh,
that, well, just let me finish the second half of the question then, because your final poem that we all loved, and some of the ones in the middle were pretty darn good too, really seems like, that Bruegel painting, or, where Icarus is in the sky and everybody's just plodding along with their life and not even noticing that a boy is dying. Here there's this beauty and in this town in France, and the church bells are ringing, and people are considering suicide, and somebody has even killed himself. So it really carries this feeling so sweetly and impactfully. So when you started out, did you have any kind of, dare I use the word, message you were trying to communicate? Or did the message appear as the poem was honed?
I don't think it has a message. It has
Mm-hmm.
an experience. When I started out, I was just interested in writing down the details of this really amazing, cool place, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then this thing that it made me kind of stop in my tracks, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I, it's just it takes a long time to figure out. It's like you're molding clay. I'm reading this interesting thing. Like Tony was asking, do you just jot down a bunch of stuff and then work with it over time? And this person is arguing that that's like you're just creating wet clay by jotting down this, and then over time you mold it and you figure out what shape it wants to take, you know. Now that doesn't always happen. Some of my poems that I like the best I've written right off the bat. Bingo, you know. And that's just sheer ecstasy when that happens. When you can write something and it's like you're just lined up right. William Carlos Williams says it's not the writing that's hard, it's being in a position to write. And for a long time, I didn't know what he meant, but I think it's like the gears on a car. If they're not sinking, then the car won't go. Whereas if they're sinking, then you can go forward. Every once in a while, the gears in your unconscious will sink and you'll just say stuff and you're like, yes, this is it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't always
Uh,
happen by any means.
well, uh, this is all about me, of course. Uh, the song that was most successful for me was a song called Midnight in Memphis, which made me a lot of money. And two things about that: I wrote it in 20 minutes, unlike a lot of songs that I sweated over for months. And I also realized, as I said about quitting uh, or not persisting, I realized that the worst thing could happen to a gambler is to win. And if you win, then you think you could do it again.
Yeah,
And I was wary about being seduced by that idea. So I quit.
smart, smart. I would,
I see.
I have a question here. What was Peter doing reading that or quoting that depressing
I don't
suicide note
remember.
in this idyllic lunch?
I don't know. I don't know. And he insists they didn't say it, but he did. He did. I don't know. Peter quotes stuff all the time. you know.
Man, does he?
And
That guy, what is with his mind?
he's got an amazing mind. He's got an amazing mind. Um, and I have no idea why we were talking about Nerval, except that we were in La France Profonde, you know. Um, I don't know, whatever. I mean, you're asking me to remember something that probably happened 30 years ago. Like, what's my name? I don't know, you know. Yeah.
I wanted to comment a bit on the on prose versus poetry, which is kind of like the first version of your poem and then the final one. And like Otis, I like the prose one almost as much as the final. Well, it was number two anyway. Um, and I've been reading while we've been doing this class, I've been rereading favorite old novels and kind of luxuriating in. I mean, there's wonderful sentences and pass in paragraphs, etc., and thinking about prose versus poetry. And so it was very nice to see in this um, evolution how much the shape of your line that you invented, which it really is, those waves really do lap uh, beautifully. And so I liked both ends of that whole uh,
Mm,
arc. And so it's sort of adding to the thoughts I'm having while I'm reading prose. I don't know what else to say about it other than there's both are kind of amazing, can be so beautiful and um, well, and also you were saying that the first part felt like it was static. It wasn't going anywhere. And of course, in a novel, there's plenty of room for
yeah.
there to be quiet, and the movement doesn't happen to have to happen in a single line or paragraph. So it's just these thoughts have been kind of on my mind.
Yeah. Let's go back to screen share real quick, and I'll show you the second thing I put up because it is a prose poem. And also because it will show you the advantages of being willing to cut. Okay, so it's way down at the bottom. Yeah. Okay, so it ended up calling, it ends up being called Inheritance. And it had to go through some real cutting. So here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to write something about my parents. The typewriter that carried him through the war, clunky old thing with high round keys and a skipping E, ripe with the funk of jungle rot. He carries it in its case, a square black box with a handle and frame corners. He has been dead since 1962, but as he approaches me, he is immaculate, as he always was, in khaki. He gives the typewriter to me, and from his hands I take it. I open the box, set the typewriter on a table. Write with this, he tells me. War is your inheritance.
No.
And in her hands, a crystal goblet. She too has been dead for many years, but when she holds it out to me, her hands with the almond-shaped nails are as beautiful as ever. The soul is a crystal goblet, she tells me. Your poetry is beautiful, but if you write the world your secrets, the world will shatter the goblet. Secrecy is your inheritance. So
Mhm.
I sent that to my online group of fellow poets, and they're like, we really like the first paragraph, but the second paragraph is like woo-woo and poetical. And the thing it is true, it is. But the thing is, I still have to find a way to write about that because my therapist, whom I used to have, would get so pissed off when she would remember that my mother had said, you must never publish your poetry, which my mother did say. She said, you must, your poetry is beautiful, but you must never publish it. The soul is a crystal goblet, and if you publish it, the world will break that goblet, you know? And it took me
Wow.
decades to discover why she said that, which is that she was writing out of her own experience and projecting onto me. But my therapist would be like, and I'm like, oh, I'm not mad at my mother for saying it, you know. So I tried to improve that in version number two, which is this is where it's embarrassing because it's so bad. So we're going to go down to the third paragraph in number two. But don't mind, she says, the light falls around you, and is not gold the buttercup I hold beneath your chin? Always, my love, you partake of light. On the other side of secrets is a sense of home so deep that you can never run astray. There's fire in the hearth, bread and milk on the table. Run, child, open the door. The gods are on the threshold, disguised as ragged strangers. Welcome them, welcome them. A thousand needless words fall into silence before they hatch, the little birds are singing. That is gaggishly bad, but it does reflect my love for the Greek myth of Damon, no, not the Greek myth of whoever it is, the married couple, and the gods come to their door and they feed the gods milk and honey and bread. And then the gods reveal themselves to be gods. And as a reward, when they're changed, when they die, they're changed into trees. I love that myth. I think it's the only happy myth about marriage that I can think of. Um, and also, it's trying to get at the fact that my mother was, in some ways, a serious mystic. But this is so when I typed that out, AI asked, explain this. And I'm like laughing. I'm like, that's a good question. I can't explain it, cracked me up. So then my friend Athena said, she said, cut this as much as you can, squeeze it. So here's the squeezed version. The typewriter carried him through the war. Clunky, with high round keys and a skipping E, ripe with the funk of jungle rot. He brings it through the mist in his square black box with a leather handle and frame corners. He has been dead for nearly 30 years, but as he approaches me, he is immaculate, as he always was, in khakis. He gives the typewriter to me, and from his hands I take it. I open the box, set the typewriter on a table. Right with this, he tells me, war is your inheritance. I'm not sure about the mist. I might kill the mist, but that is a dream I had. And it was quite a wonderful dream.
Oh
My
my.
dad was in the South Pacific all through World War II. And my mom told me many times that when she married my dad, he was orange from anti-malarial medicine. And his typewriter did have jungle rot. So those are like these little details that stuck with me. Um, and he did in my dreams say, right with this, war is your inheritance. So I took that as kind of like a true dream. And then I realized I really like the final two lines. It's a whole it's a separate little poem. A thousand needless words fall into silence before they hatch, the little birds are singing. No idea what that means, but there it is. So if anybody has quick comments on that, I wanted to show you that because the second version is embarrassingly awful, just awful. But when you're writing, you have to go down your secret awful road and then consent to get rid of them. You know what I mean? It's like you're going to have places in your mind that you wish never had to see the light of day, but they're part of your imagination, and you have to let them have their say and then let go of them. So let's go away from screen sharing at that point.
Well,
So
Uh, I
I want to make a comment. I thought that in the second version, what was strong about it was the juxtaposition of the two different inheritances,
yeah,
one
me
from the
too.
father and one from the mother. And when you added that third paragraph, and that regardless of, the tone of it, it just lost that power of these two different views of the inheritance, which I thought was strong in the second version.
Yeah, I mean, I just really wanted to write something about my father and my mother. And I
Yeah.
wanted them to be exactly the same size and exactly the same kind of, shockingness or something. But it just wasn't happening with the mom one. She had to talk too much and it just got vague and it got kind of, artsy fartsy. So I
I
just had,
don't agree. I like them all. I like the first version as it stood. I thought that was fine, and I didn't agree that the one in italics was awful. They were all kind of lovely, I thought, except the very last one where you just got two lines. It's like you've the whole thing is disappeared. I just their images. You're lucky to have parents like this. If that's what they were like, the image of the typewriter and war is what did he say? War is your muse, and the goblet that'll shatter. Those are great images. Did they say those things?
Well, my dad, that was a dream, but my mom actually did say that thing about the goblet. But, I just need to work with the mom one more. I need to make it toughen up, you know. I need to make it more stronger.
Well, your parents were pretty poetic in themselves. My parents, I can't imagine either one of them saying anything quite so lovely as these things.
My dad didn't say it, I dreamed it.
Oh, right, right, right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I
Well, I wouldn't even dream of my dad saying something like that. Let's put it that way.
looked up jungle rot. Um, I think it's a condition of people, not a condition of typewriters.
Well,
Yeah, right.
yeah, but the typewriter did have it, at least as it was explained to me. Because, it got damp and it's probably just the leather case got really funky and nasty.
Yeah,
Well, did you write with it?
I guess so.
You don't remember?
No, see, what you don't realize is I didn't know my dad very well because he was career Army and he was gone a whole lot.
Where was he in the South Pacific?
New Guinea, New Zealand, Australia, the Philippines. That was before I was born.
Holy
And then he
crap.
was in Korea during the Korean War,
Ugh,
you know.
that's some
So,
awful stuff.
yeah, yeah. So he's in many ways a mystery to me. And then he died. He got brain cancer when I was 13 and he died when I was 15. And I've written about him, but in many ways he's an unknown person to me, you know.
And do you ever find yourself taking an excursion from poetry into prose writing?
Well, I do write prose, but I don't write fiction. I write prose poems and I'm interested in um micro memoir, little tiny memoir things. I just wrote one that I really like called Greyhound, which is about how I used to at Pomona College ride the Greyhound bus,
Mhm.
you know, have various misadventures on the Greyhound. Yeah, I'll send it to you guys. I just wrote it. It's pretty scary. But the thing is, Willie Cather said, writers, like, what happens to you by the time you're 15, that's your material for the whole rest of your life. And it's kind of distressingly true. It's like, oh, not that again. Oh God, not that again. You know?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Really, nothing poetic has happened to you since you were 15, Ann? Come on.
And then no, it's not that. And sure, I write a lot about what's happened, but it's things that happen in childhood and early adolescence. They're in your memory bank or your image bank in a way that you just absolutely can't ever get over or get rid of.
That's
Sure.
where the energy comes from, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. 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 So you keep going back to things, you know. Leslie, you've been incredibly quiet today.
I'm just trying to absorb it all. I'm thinking. I do have to say, I felt like I really liked the first writing, but it was a different thing.
Mhm.
But I'm going to never forget that image
Which
because I
image?
won't forget the image, all the details you put in it.
Oh, yeah.
I was sitting with you on the bench watching the whole thing. I'm going to remember that
Yeah.
indelibly. But I thought that the end one was very successful because the first one I thought, how are you going to make some kind of a connection, even though it's not, stated as this hard, fast bridge between the two? How are you going to work the suicide into this gorgeous,
Yeah.
peaceful town scene? So I thought that was really interesting. But I think it's probably one of my biggest problems. If you fall in love with the details,
Oh,
all the sensory details, it's hard to get rid of them.
where's the dog?
I was
Yeah,
just gonna say,
exactly. I
I'm an
love
animal
that
lover,
dog.
but I'm kind of glad you got rid of that scruffy peeing lugubriously dog.
Yeah.
I don't miss him.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
It's
boy,
crazy.
that's the first time I've ever heard lugubriously used about peeing.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
it's
was
like
sad
him
to lose that.
forever.
You were sad to lose it.
I
Yeah.
wanted to
I
point
have
out that,
a question.
yeah.
I have a question that's only
Mm.
slightly off topic, but it's for Anne because she's a Southerner now, and you told us to watch Sinners, and I did. And I want to know if you're willing to say something about it. What do you think of the coda in Sinners
Remind me what the coda is.
at
Oh,
the end, the part after the end?
yeah, but I don't remember it.
Oh,
They go back to the bar, right? And uh,
In old age.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, I'd totally forgotten. Oh, so it's showing that he became a successful blues singer, the young guy, right?
yeah, but the vampires come for him, and he doesn't go with them.
I had totally forgotten that.
Yeah,
It's like
okay.
I was watching it. I guess I don't think that that was the strongest part of the movie, but I just was in for the ride. What did you think of it?
I thought it was incredible, but I was upset by that because I thought the rest was so fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was an amazing movie. To me, the moment, oh God, I can't even talk about it. The moment that stands out the most vividly to me is when the vampires are sitting on that log singing Wild Mountain Time, and
yeah.
then
Mhm.
they're gonna go attack. It's like I'm freaking myself out talking about that right now. I'm very glad that Michael B. Jordan won the Best Actor
Me
Oscar.
too.
He totally deserved it.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you for being here. I will send you a Greyhound so that you can know my evil freshman year at Pomona, which only got worse as it went along. Um, and we're going to start talking about Galway Canal next time. I think that you will like him. He's pretty amazing. I used to
Thank
be a
you.
member of the Claremont College's Galway Canal fan club. Did you guys remember Mary Twiss, who became Mary Barnes? She married Dick Barnes. Do you remember her? She and a couple of other friends of mine would sit in the front row when he gave poetry readings and just like bat our lashes adoringly at him. He was incredibly handsome, had the most beautiful voice I've ever heard on a human being. And I will tell you a cool story about him next time. Okay, take care.
Thank
And
you. That was really wonderful.
thank
Thank
you
you.
for opening up your process to us. That was really enlightening.
Sure.
Really, really great.
Such courage, such courage.
Uh-huh. Now you will instantly forget everything I said so that you cannot shame me.
You're gonna have
Okay.
a one of those like in oh geez, the Alien movie where they
Yeah,
wipe your mind, mind
Yeah,
exactly.
from
the
memory.
neuralizer.
Exactly.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye,
All right.
everybody.